Playing against dnLL using the Edric deck, and he has quite an interesting take on his mono red deck. He's using Norin the Wary, and I've been super skeptical of any kind of possible value this could have. However, there is one card that combos with it super well. I'm not sure what else. Pandemonium is okay with it, but a very risky card to play. But the card I'm talking about is Genesis Chamber, and so anyway, we'll see how this plays out. He's going first, and I mulligan a hand with 2 lands, but I didn't feel it was quick enough. Mulligan again, and then decide to keep this hand. Against him, I really am looking for some early disruption, and because his deck is actually can be quite fast and very scary. We actually played a number of games here yesterday as well as today. So this game I set myself up on a very slow defensive. I'm going to close Norin, or else we're just going to keep seeing that over and over. Setup after the double mulligan. But luckily I just keep pulling lands, so this allows me to take my time and build up to the board position that I want. He gets Goblin Matron and I counter it. And with the mana, I'm able to play Deranged Hermit and Edric, and I have a counter spell. So this game here doesn't really speak too well for his deck. I mean, this is how, obviously, how I want my games to go, even when I mulligan multiple times. But take a look at this other game, in which he's going first. So you look at this hand here, this is not really quick. It could be, I suppose, if I mystical for natural order. But I decided I'm going to mulligan anyway, I think. Yep, and I mulligan to this. It looks a lot better. Gets his commander down. And plays turn 2 Warren Instigator, so I am under pressure. So end of turn I fetch a Trop and Brainstorm. After I wait for his commander to come back, Brainstorm, because I just hate that thing flickering all the time. And play a Bloom Tender, who then takes one for the team and just dies so that I don't get hit by Warren Instigator. Can't afford for him to put 2 goblins into play for free. And now the madness begins. This is the card that makes that deck just completely ridiculous. So basically what it amounts to is if I play a spell, a creature, I'm going to get a creature, but so will he. If he plays a creature, he'll get a creature, and so will he. So every creature, so basically this is just basically put 2 mirrors for him into play or more every turn. So yeah, I'm able to trade with Warren Instigator here, which is fine by me. So I play Sylvan, and this is just not good. Nothing. There's no way I can stop him from generating more and more tokens. And you can see how completely insane that deck is. Imagine if I get a Cradle in play and he clones it. So of course I trade and pay some life here. But I can't afford to pay too much over the course of this game, or I'm, just gonna die. However, thankfully I've got a Force of Will and a Hermit to go with it, and a clone. So I can start to catch up to the mirror tokens. So he just clones his mountain and plays a Lightning Crafter. So he's going to champion the Rummaging Goblin there, and then have a horrible Lightning Bolt on a stick. They definitely have to Force of Will that. I decided I'm going to do it with Leak, since he's got so much mana. It's gotten to the point where a Leak is probably not that good in the game. So I pitch it. Now in order to use Image on the Hermit, unfortunately I'm going to have to waste a turn just tapping out like that. So I don't pay life there, but I set myself up. I know what's on top. And he cycles away a Trading Post and then plays Buried Ruin. Trading Post, kind of disgusting with Genesis Chamber, since these are both creatures and artifacts. So it's just tap to draw a card, draw a card, draw a card, and we can also recur artifacts. And he casts Thieves' Auction. So I'm going to minimize my commander. So Thieves' Auction, exiles all non-token permanents, so those won't be affected. And then he gets to put one of the cards that's exiled into play under his control, followed by myself doing the same, and then him doing the same, me doing the same. So if you look at the board, you know the first thing that's coming into play, and it's coming into play on his side. Before we go any further, though, in response, I decide I'm going to kill that buried ruin, so I don't have to sweat the trading post coming back and being an even bigger problem for me later. So my Sylvan and Deranged Hermit are exiled. His Rummaging Goblin and Genesis Chamber are exiled along with all of our lands. So this is a little bit horrible. And he gets a Hermit. And the ability goes on the stack. It will, of course, resolve after Thieves' Auction finishes resolving. I immediately take Sylvan Library. He takes a Rummaging Goblin, and then I start taking the best lands I can. He, of course, takes my land, so I take a forest because there were 2 islands exiled. In fact, if you want to see what all's exiled, there's an island left and a bunch of mountains in Genesis Chamber. Doesn't really matter who controls the chamber, so I just focus on taking as many of his lands as I can. I actually end up with more lands from the auction, and he ends up with islands, but I did lose a duel. But most importantly, I think he wanted to get himself a Deranged Hermit. The thing is here, though, it's interesting, is because he took islands, if I can find Thada Adel, he won't actually be able to block. And the other interesting thing is that it was a brief window when, or actually, because the permanents enter play tapped, Genesis Chamber doesn't trigger. Otherwise, that would be like even more horrible to have this thing popping off. Boom, boom, boom. 2 more tokens for him. So now the bad thing is that since it's tapped, it won't trigger for me on my turn either. I make a slight error, and of course Norin doesn't trigger it. So I make a slight error here, and so what I do is I set myself up and then tap my mana incorrectly. Well, I play my cards in the wrong order, I suppose, would be more accurate, I think. So let's see, first thing I do is Phantasmal Image the Hermit, so I'm still in this game. And then I pod, immediately killing my mirror and getting Wirewood Symbiote so that I can bounce a Hermit, so I can keep hermiting. However, my mistake is that this is actually a copy of a Hermit, it's not actually a Hermit. So although it's cool that I'm going to be able to pick up my clone, it's not quite as amazing as I had hoped it would have been. And he's probably not going to pay the Echo to give me a bunch of squirrels and such, so that dies. Kind of funny that he even... Oh, actually, he couldn't pay the Echo for a number of reasons. It wouldn't produce green since it's not within his color, even if he tapped the chop for green, and secondly, he didn't have a second green. But anyway. So he pitches Warp World, which is really interesting, to draw a card. I think Warp World is probably would have benefited him more, but maybe not. This deck's pretty heavy on permanents. However, Genesis Chamber is turned on again, so... And then he gets a Tuk-Tuk Scrapper, so... I got to pod once, but I don't have a live pod, so... I can... But what I can do here now is I can... So I pick up my Hermit in order to untap whatever is Norin the Wary. Doesn't matter. So what I can do here is I can kill the Genesis Chamber by cloning his Tuk-Tuk Scrapper. So I set my cards down with the Scalding on top. And it's possible I may have been better off having paid life there just to shuffle away the next card. But this was a turn where I miss tap my mana. What I should have done, or I misplay rather, play my cards in the wrong order. Had I thought it through correctly, I would have cast Spiketail Hatchling first, Scrib second, Phantasmal Image third to get maximum number of mirror tokens. But I screw up. I play Scrib, Phantasmal Image on Tuk-Tuk Scrapper, killing Genesis Chamber, and then And then for some reason I thought that I hadn't played a land, so... Is that what it was? No. Anyway. Scratch that. Anyway, I ended up playing my cards in the wrong order there, and I miss out on a guy, so hopefully it doesn't end up punishing me. But look at this. With only 2 cards in hand, he's able to cast Goblin Welder, which is a huge problem since all these are artifact creatures. And he's going to be able to get Genesis Chamber, Trading Post, basically. Also, he can lock out, like if I play another decent artifact like GTA or something, he can just exchange my own mirror, or my GTA rather, for well, at this point for a pod. I guess that wouldn't be too bad, but we'll see how it goes down. Oh yeah, and did I mention he has 1 card in hand? So I think I misplay again. So I take Scalding Tarn because I don't think Rofellos ultimately is going to be super valuable. And this lets me have Forbid. I missed the fact that I played a land already this turn. So I go ahead and cast Edric because I need to start drawing cards. And send Scrib and Spike. And I'm hoping to find something to deal with Welder. Even if I just found like Snap for now. And then you know, I could hopefully draw like Viridian Shaman would be the best thing with Wirewood, because then I could just start popping his mirrors. Anyway, but I get this, and when I look and count the creatures in play, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that's a blank. Yeah, and I missed the fact for some reason that I hadn't played a land, so I pick up a forest here to untap my Scrib. Just straight up horrible play. I was thinking I could play a forest and I'd have Forbid. So having screwed that up, I decided that what I'm going to do to try to fix things is regrowth my Deranged Hermit so that I can start Hermit Symbiote shenanigans next turn. And pass for the turn. He just clones his mountain. He can always clone something else later. And plays Soul Ring, which I can't afford to Spiketail. It's going to make it really hard to Spiketail anything. Soul Ring reforged the frickin' soul. So with his last card in hand, so his second to last card was Welder and his last card was Reforged the Soul. So I was like, oh, so frustrated. But at the same time, I guess I could be grateful that it wasn't Memory Jar to go with Welder, or Wheel of Fortune since he would have more mana up. There are quite a few draw 7s, I guess, available in the format. So I lose a Forbid and a Hermit, which is really painful, and a Forest that I killed for absolutely no reason whatsoever, and draw this mess. And I'm looking around for stuff to clone, but there really isn't anything particularly stellar here. So he gets a land and a Sting Scourger, and uses this opportunity to bounce my Wirewood, which indicates to me that he has something he wants to do to Edric. However, I'm not going to pick it up in response, so make him make the play. Plus I have Spiketail. And noticing I'm low on life, he sends the team, rummages his duplicate, and then welds the Soul Ring into duplicate, and exiles Edric. So much for the Spiketail plan. And of course I could have picked him up in response to, with the duplicate on targeting him if the Wirewood was out. So he plays that correctly. And I just go ahead and exile Edric. Now he's got I don't know what's going on with these little mini. He's got 2 counters on him at this point. So he's 7 to play. There's my exiled pal. Okay, so blockers. So when I'm looking at the situation, I want to kill as many of his artifact mirrors as I can, because if he has no artifacts, his Welder turns off until he gets one into play. So if I can kill all of his artifact mirrors, then all he's left with is the duplicate, and I may be able to take that out. I was thinking I could metamorph my Tuk Tuk Scrapper and kill his duplicate, potentially, and shut that down completely. The other line of play that I was considering was metamorphing welder, but I felt it was just too dangerous to leave a welder in play, even though I have like good things to weld off. So step one is block as many mirrors as possible. And then step two is figuring out if I wanted to make any other blocks. Like, do I want to throw 2 in front of a tuk-tuk scrapper? Do I want to block with scrib? And I decided ultimately no, but I was going to try to protect my life since, although I have map and killing creatures means that Cradle is weaker. He's got this clone thing here, and I don't really want to get a Cradle until I strip that. So it's going to be a couple of turns, and that means I have a few turns to play some creatures out and then get my Cradle. So I decide that I'm going to just protect my life total with creatures and block with the squirrels. And we drop down to a more sane board position here, and I take 4 points of damage. So and look at that beautiful top of my deck. So I put back Forest, and then because the top cards of my deck are so good, I have to pay 4 life. I'm glad I protected my life total a little bit. And I figure here I have everything I need to win the game. So give you a moment to figure it out. Hopefully you see it. You might want to pause. Okay, and I assume you've unpaused or you don't want to think about it any further, or you see it. So the play here is vault, ring, and then save the ring. Try not to tap it since I have Sword of Feast and Famine. So map, Betch's Cradle. So I just said I didn't want to play Cradle, but with Winter Orb in my hand, it's going to take, even if he untaps this land, if he plays the land and taps 2 to turn this into a Gaia's Cradle, he has to tap it. So it would be tapping 2 and the Thespian Sage, which means that he wouldn't be able to use it, and then I could just strip mine it away. And so I go ahead and put the Cradle into play. Really wish I had that extra forest that I threw away for no reason, because I could play the Symbiote beforehand. So I metamorph as a duplicate, because I decide that instead of killing duplicate, I'm going to kill welder, because I don't even want to play around. Like, instead of tuk-tuk scrapping the duplicate, I just want to take 0 chances. I just want the welder gone. I don't want him getting any artifacts into play and doing any kind of bad stuff there. So I do that, and then with exactly 6 mana, I'm able to play Wirewood Symbiote, Sword of Feast and Famine, equip the Scrib, and send with just a Scrib because there's no point in attacking for extra damage. I'm the control player, obviously. Unless Edric's in play, this is just going to sit back and be an emergency blocker. To get a Faithless Looting, not too helpful, but it's okay. I'm able to play my Commander and Winter Orb. And I decided I'm not going to spend any mana and move the sword over. I could, of course, but I can also just untap Scrib, either by picking up an elf or by picking up a forest, so I figure that's okay. So I don't know if he didn't see it or just decided he had better things to do, but he doesn't untap the mountain, the right mountain. Can't pay his Echo on his Sting Scourger, which actually, at this point, every creature is relevant, from my perspective. He activates Rummaging Goblin, pitching Mog War Marshal, and makes no play. So upkeep, it's perfectly fine to overuse the Cradle, since I'm going to get to use it again with Sword of Feast and Famine. So I untap my Vault and just set a couple of unhelpful lands on the top. And then I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll move this sword over and then I'll swing that way. That lets me hit with this, this, and this for the purposes of Edric. And then I'm like, what am I doing? He's got a 2/4. Besides, I really need to hit him with the Sword of Feast and Famine. So I play my Strip Mine and slide it right back over to this. I'm putting on Scrib because obviously, like, I don't want to put it on this. I might need to actually sacrifice it. And I play my Strip Mine I didn't want to telegraph that I had it, but in this case it's going to untap, and I wanted to have Remand available for any combat tricks. Like, Lightning Bolt. Even if he played Bolt, I could bounce it back to his hand. He'd have to play it again. I could spike it and tap his mana out if I wanted, or, who knows. It's probably not the best example, but I can't think of all that many combat tricks Red could have. Turns out that my opponent can think of one, and it is Chaos Warp targeting Winter Orb. And I could remand that back to his hand, but I actually don't want him to cast Chaos Warp a second time. I don't want him casting Chaos Warp at all. So, although it's going to cost me a card, it benefits. I think it has a more long-term benefit. It's worthwhile. When I'm hitting him with Sword and Scrib and an Edric, I think an extra card is okay. So he sees that the Winter Orb block is pretty much tight, and he gives up. So I thought that was kind of an amazing game there. It's very interesting what he has going here. His deck is actually, like I said, it's surprisingly challenging quite often. I don't have it. I think we did play one where he won. It was actually like a best of 3 series. So he just got like turn 1 guy, or turn 1 gamble, I think it was, and turn 2 Genesis Chamber, and then from there I was completely overwhelmed. Although, to be fair, that was an earlier version of the deck without as much artifact removal as I have now. So, this is the version of the deck now. Speaking of artifact removal, it's running Claim again, mainly because I haven't been able to decide between the 3 options, and so by default I'll take the cheapest one. The other options are Deglamour and the green and 1 sorcery with Conspire that destroys. In fact, I'll look it up for you right now. Deglamour and Gleeful Sabotage are the other 2 options for this slot. But since since I've been stuck on not knowing exactly which one I want, I go with Claim by default. I've added Wirewood Symbiote, I've added Thada Adele, and Forbid. I've actually taken out Bribery in order to put Forbid and Thada in there, Thada specifically. I figure bribing them for artifacts is probably better than bribing them for creatures. Bribing them for creatures definitely gets more scoops right out of the get-go. But my hunch is that people who lose to Bribery are going to lose to me anyway, because if they're a weenie deck, Bribery probably doesn't help me. If they're a big creature deck, they're probably too slow and they're going to get run over. If they are a blue-based deck, a 5 casting cost sorcery on my part is super risky, and quite possibly they might be playing creatureless to boot. So for those reasons, I took Bribery out, and I put in Thada because Thada has the opposite case. While Bribery seems like it helps me a lot, and it does, and I would like to have it in here, my logic is telling me that it's probably better against people I already beat. Thada, on the other hand, is worse against weenies and worse against other things, but better against people I have more difficulty beating. So that's why I switched the 2 out, because an example of a difficult deck to face would actually be somebody else playing Thada Adele. If they go first turn Soul Ring, second turn Thada, and they're going first, I could be in a lot of trouble, because that Thada is going to start fetching like my own equipment and my shackles, and it's going to be a major nightmare. But against them, if I have my own Thada, then I have the opportunity to potentially take whatever it is that they've got and balance the scales a little bit. Meanwhile, if I play against another Edric deck, for example, then that thing is incredibly powerful, and of course mirror matches are important when you're playing one of the best decks in the format. So Wirewood Symbiote came in because basically he allows for some serious abuse with Hermit, some modest abuse with Viridian Shaman, and some solid plays with some solid tricks with Sylvan Ranger. But also he can be a mana generator, and he allows me to block with a creature and then return it to my hand before damage is dealt. So if my opponent has a Jite, or maybe a Sword and Fire and Ice, or a Sword... Well, I can't do a Feast and Famine because there's no mono blue elves, but Fire and Ice or Jite I can block with a elf and then just pick the elf up. It also makes it super easy to flip a Rayo over here, and as you saw, it gives me a few different tricks with when I'm cloning things and that type of deal. And finally, what it does though that I really like is it makes Edric safe. So like if I have Wirewood Symbiote and I play Edric, you know, if I go turn 1 Symbiote, my opponent goes first, he's playing that mono red deck, and he plays his commander, I play Symbiote. Who cares what turn 2 is? Turn 3 I cast Edric, and I attack for 1, and then he casts his turn, he tries to Chaos Warp Edric. I just pick him up. I just pick him up, and so this is basically like almost a counterspell for removal. So that's pretty awesome too. I think a little better than like Sylvan Safekeeper, since it has combos too. So those are the changes I've made recently, and I do hope you enjoy it. Watching these games, I appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.